codenamed Erica. The third-generation Escort was launched in September 1980. The car, Ford Europe's second front-wheel drive model, was originally meant to be called the Ford Erica, but ended up retaining the Escort name. Some say this was due to British consumers' reluctance to let go of the Escort badge, as the first two generations of Escort had been among Britain's most popular cars, with the Mark II being Britain's best-selling car in 1976, and some say that the Germans were concerned with the song Erika, which was a famous battle march of the German armed forces during World War II. The North American Escort introduced at this time was a distantly related derivative. Sales in the United Kingdom increased, and by 1982 it was the nation's best-selling car. Unlike the Mark II, which had essentially been a reskin of the original 1968 Escort Mark I, the Mark III was a completely new wheels-up design, and was conceived as a high-efficiency vehicle which would compete with the Volkswagen Golf and Honda Civic, considered at the time the class benchmarks. And indeed the car was launched with the advertising tagline "Simple is efficient." The biggest changes being the adoption of front-wheel drive, and the new hatchback body. It was Ford Europe's second front-wheel drive model launch, the first being the smaller Fiesta in 1976, while the hatchback body style had debuted in the company's range in 1974 on the second-generation Capri. Also new were the overhead camshaft CVH engines in 1.3 litres and 1.6 litres. With the older Ford Valencio engine from the Fiesta powering the 1.1 litres derivative. Although there was a short-lived 1.1 version of the CVH engine sold in certain markets before it was discontinued in 1982. The suspension was fully independent all around, departing from the leaf spring arrangement found on its predecessors. The Escort Mark III was voted European Car of the Year in 1981, fighting off stiff competition from Italy's Fiat Panda and British Leyland's Austin Metro. From launch, the car was available in popular L, GL, Gear and XR3 models. From 1982, a 5-speed manual gearbox was introduced across the range. This was now standard on the 1.6 litres versions and could be specified as an option on most 1.3 litres engines. A selection of features were available, either as standard fitment or optional extras depending on model, including a tilt and slide sunroof, central locking, and electric windows. All models except for base and L were fitted with a check light system for low fuel, low oil, low coolant, low screen wash, and worn-out brake pads. Power steering was not available on European Escorts, although it was available on the US Escort. For the 1983 model year, the Ford 80X 3-speed automatic transmission, developed primarily for the US version, was available on the 1.6 litres engine within a couple of years of the car's launch. The two-door Escort van arrived in the marketplace in February 1981. A slightly delayed introduction caused by large remaining stocks of the Mark II Escort van. The van has twin rear doors and unusual small side windows behind the front doors, necessary to provide more over-the-shoulder visibility which would otherwise be limited by the use of the short front doors from the 5-door Escort. Derived from the van was a pickup version of the Escort, the Bantam, which was produced in South Africa. However, the car attracted criticism from the motoring press at launch due to its suspension, with positive camber on the front wheels and negative camber at the rear, giving rise to the Mark III's infamous knock-knee stance. The Mark III soon had a reputation for a harsh, unforgiving ride. In 1983 the revised suspension mounts from the Orion and the larger steering rack were introduced as running changes for the 1984 model. Another engine, introduced in August 1983, was the 1.6 litres diesel engine. Developed in Dagenham, it was remarkably economical for its time, and still is to this day, managing over 70 miles per gallon. It was available on the L and GL models. However, the performance was not so impressive, with only 54 bhp and a top speed of barely 90 miles per hour. The Escort Estate was initially only available with 3 doors, but a 5-door version was introduced in 1983. In that year, a saloon version of the Escort, the Orion, was launched. It used the same mechanicals as the hatchback, but had a more upmarket image and was not available with the smaller 1.1 liters engine. The MK-3 model, 1980 to 1986, was the most common type of car on British roads in December 1989, with almost 1,500,000 examples registered. A convertible version, made by coach builder Carman, appeared the same year as the 5-door Estate. It was the first drop-top car produced by Ford Europe since the Corsair of the 1960s. The Escort Cabriolet was initially available in both X-Ray and gear specification, but the gear variant was later dropped. To compete with Volkswagen's Golf GTI, a hot hatch version of the Mark III was developed, the XR3. Initially this featured a tuned version of the 1.6-litre CVH engine fitted with a twin-choke Weber carburetor, uprated suspension and numerous cosmetic alterations. It lacked a 5-speed transmission and fuel injection. Fuel injection finally arrived in October 1982, creating the X-Ray, 8 months behind the limited edition, 8,659 examples, racetrack-influenced RS 1600i. The Cologne-developed RS received a more powerful engine with 115 PS, thanks to computerized ignition and a modified head as well as the fuel injection. The final performance update arrived in the form of the turbocharged 132 PS RS Turbo model in October 1984. The RS Turbo was somewhat of a disappointment. It had been delayed several times, and when it went on sale in early 1985 the chassis came in for severe criticism. The RS Turbo Series 1 was only marketed in a few European nations as production was limited to 5,000 examples, all in white. They were well equipped, with the alloy wheels from the RS 1600i, Recaro seats, and a limited slip differential. One car only was finished in black. It was built especially for Lady Diana. The Series 2 RS Turbo continued with the 1986 Mark IV model. The Ford Escort RS 1700T was a prototype RWD car designed by Ford Motor Company in 1980 to compete in Group B rallying. Prototypes were based on the Mark III Escort and featured a developed 1.8 liters turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that produced over 300 bhp. Also a prototype with a 2.4-liter Hart engine, derived from a Formula 2 unit, was tested in 1982. Persistent problems during the vehicle's development prompted Ford to drop plans for its production and instead begin work on an all-wheel drive model to beat the Audi Quattro, designed and built from scratch, resulting in the famous RS 200.